Well, hello. Welcome back to another day in time.
Yep.
We are at foundation number 11. This is episode 12. Keep your hope in heaven and hold lightly the things of the earth. Maybe it's too wild for you to imagine since Georgia Tech is so
close to heart. Yeah.
close. Sure. But let's just imagine that you got a Georgia Tech player, and all of a sudden he just stops playing for Georgia Tech, and he starts playing for, let's say, Georgia. Okay,
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, as if Georgia needed help. But anyway, we're football. Okay,
Okay,
not
gotcha.
basketball or baseball. But this Tech player starts blocking Tech players and throwing the ball or pitching the ball or whatever to Georgia players. And on one occasion, he helps this team score. Could you imagine the audacity?
I can hear it in the stands.
Oh, yeah. All 12 of y'all would be upset. Anyway, but we never in a million years would you imagine a player on your team just all of a sudden stop and start playing for another team.
Right.
But it happens, accidentally. People catch it on camera. There'll be little kids playing out. They're like, no, wrong way. And they're kicking into the other goal.
Right.
And
That's right.
You can't help that. But as silly as that is, or how outrageous that would be if it was, let's say for the national championship, we can do the same thing with the Lord.
Oh.
If we're not careful, that we will be on his team, but live or act as though in ways that, or hold on to things of this earth that it looks like we're playing for the other team.
Yeah, it seems to me that's really kind of where the delusion can set in for a Christian, and the devil is very effective in getting a Christian to think that I can ride this fence, right?
Yeah.
And so the scripture's clear about loyalty, about where our heart resides, that there is no such thing as riding the fence. But that's the great ploy and the sell of the devil in getting us to think that you can have your feet wet, but you can be on both sides of the fence and give me your time. Give him what was it? The idea of just being lukewarm, and that's where I'm wondering if that's really kind of ideal with the Christians. That's really where the devil wants us, and thinking, that we can play both sides and really be deceived. So
yeah, I had a sister in South Georgia tell me one time. She said, "You can ride the fence." She said, "But the fence belongs to the devil." And I thought, well, that'll preach.
yeah,
There's nothing worse than somebody who dresses like a Christian and willfully acts in a different way. Bible calls that a hypocrite.
That's right.
What separates Christians who sin from Christians who live in sin is the fact that they live in it or don't live in it. The King James doesn't help us with some of the words in continuing sin or occasional sin, but the picture is if I live in a perpetual state of sin, there's no sacrifice for that.
That's right.
But when I mess up by walking in the light, there is cleansing and sacrifice for that. But back to this, one way or the other, when Jesus used the word hypocrite, it wasn't fancy. It was ugly. It was bitter. But Luke chapter 16 and verse 13. The whole parable is about basically a dishonest manager, somebody who's been given something, who manage his business in a certain way. The manager delegates his work, and in verse 10 it says, "One who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much." You ever heard people say, "Well, if I had more, I'd give more"?
Yeah.
Well, if I had more money, then I'd give more money. Or I'd give if I had more money. That's probably not true. We think it would be.
Right.
But this is the picture here. One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. This isn't a guarantor to say that, if you make X number of dollars and you give a whole lot to the Lord, then he's going to give you a job to make more money. But it's the statement to say, if you've got a little bit, a little is a lot with God in it. But verse 11, if then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you to the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. So much of Jesus' conversation, I think it was like 1 out of every 8 verse in the Gospels is about money. And this isn't itself, this class isn't about money itself, but it's a picture that every sin is an idol. Every sin is something that I choose to believe or I choose to serve rather than God alone. His system is set up that he don't let us ride the fence. He don't let us play both. It does his church a whole lot of harm when there are Christians who ride the fence and ride it publicly, and there's no discipline, that the elders or church members don't hold each other accountable. There's nothing worse for the congregation. It's a black eye for the church when there are members who are willfully disobedient, and it's willfully known.
Yeah, in this passage, it's interesting how the idea starts with the service of two masters. But the reality is Jesus reveals the situation. There is hate or despising of the one in reality, while there's loyalty and love to the other.
Right.
And so even in those situations that you're speaking of within a church home, where that kind of disobedience is existing, the thought that immediately comes to mind is 1 Corinthians 5, when the brother had taken up with his father's wife, and the church there was puffed up about it. I'm sure probably intelligently speaking the truth of God, they would say this is a sin, but in reality, the way that they treated it, the way they treated him, the way they treated that family apparently was indicative of the fact that they were despising the truth of God. So,
yeah, it's there's something about our actions speak louder than words. We brought this up a couple of times. Sometimes there may be situations in our families or in our house where we have to endure or help bring up somebody, especially in the church. Just because somebody comes out of that water don't mean that they're going to stop doing what they did before they got in that water. Their mind has to change. But there are, we were having this conversation before the show, there are certain sins that if we're not careful will take a hold of us, and it will have we will have a hard time trying to get out of that. Addictions. Addictions are huge. And how much of some sins are addiction, how much of them are choice. That very situation, it does nobody no good to lay a blanket over and say, oh, well, it's all just addiction, bless their hearts, because the Bible don't paint that picture.
Right.
But in reality, this whole world is, Psalm 19 verse 1, the heavens are declaring the glory of God. It's screaming that there is a God, when some of the world is actually screaming at God in the way that they live, or, when we go to the Hebrews, we look in the book of Hebrews, you making the sacrifice of God of ill effect, and you're putting him back up on that cross. That doesn't happen when I sin, but that's when I go back into any other lifestyle than a Christ-like lifestyle. When I throw my hands up and walk into whatever I want to, there's a verse I want to look at in Psalm 84. Verse 10. This don't sound like a lot of people today, but you want it to be said of every Christian in God's house. Verse 10, for a day in your courts is better, meaning God's courts, is better than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of wickedness. Now, why do you think that's the case?
listen, when there is such a stark contrast to God's way and the world's way, and how damaging the world's way can be, and how the effect of that is so degrading, that when we taste the love of God, the experience that we have of cleansing, of hope, of all of the things, all of the blessings, Ephesians 1, that we have that exist in Christ Jesus, and we know the effect of God working in us just to be at the door in His presence, it is plenty for me.
Yeah.
As opposed to thinking about all of the things that it seems would fill us up on this earth, but in reality, all it's doing is just draining us. The storehouse concept and Matthew 6, where we're laying up treasures in heaven as opposed to on earth, and that concept and what it just does, because Jesus reveals that, right? And what happens with those things that we accumulate in this life. The contrast is so stark to me that it just seems if I can get on the inside, there, and I can be in His presence. Conceptually, if he's I can see Him. He's way over there, and I'm just at the edge of the door, watching folks come in. I'm good. I'm in His presence. I can see Him, as opposed to the other end where there's just nothing but Mary. This initial physical high, but then this just deep abyss of guilt and disappointment. And
man, when I policed, it was something to see the darkness of the world. And there are some officers who start policing, and the darkness is enticing and it overtakes them. I'm thankful by God's grace that didn't happen to me. Where you can when I saw the darkness, I saw how much light was needed in that room, situation, case, problem, whatever. And those people, if they're honest, they'll tell you, "Get me out of here. I do not want to be in this state. I have served this world too long. It has taken so much of me. It's taken my teeth. It's taken my health. It's taken my child. I've had to go into homes and forcibly remove children out of a home because those people chose to serve the world. And those children are witness to that.
Yeah.
That's destruction. That's awful. That type of lifestyle. It seems like to the world, Satan is saying pleasure, 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 but in reality, God's saying hell, hell, hell. Get out of that. Yep. And He allows people to experience that type of hell, if you will, so that they can get their mind right.
That's right.
Sometimes people have to be at the very bottom of the pit and be out of everything possible before they'll wake up.
Right.
Some people are that way. I want to be a wiser man, learn from your mistakes.
That's
if you'll
right.
make those for me, just let me know how that works out. That'd be good. Let's have some real talk conversation. Evaluate your treasure. You're at home, you're with your family. Ask your children, ask your spouse, what really is our treasure? There's no better way to find out how much junk you have than to move. When we were at Moultrie, we rented the whole time we were there, except the last year and a half, or the last year. And we bought a house when we were there, and because we got tired of moving. We moved 5 times in 6 years.
Wow.
You would be surprised how much stuff we got rid of because we got tired of moving. Our stuff just got smaller and smaller. But when you move, you're like, this is awful. Let's just set a match to this and walk away.
That's right.
And say it was insurance companies used to call it an act of God. Something just happened to it. But there's no better way to see how much junk you have and really how much of the world that you're holding on to when you move.
That's right.
Matthew chapter 6. You have that?
I do.
Okay. Start in verse 19. Let's cut through some of this.
Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
The last part of that, he's talking about he's not saying don't lay it up because you're just going to get stole.
Right.
The end of that that passage, verse 21, where your heart is, the danger in possessions is not that they will be stolen, but the danger in possessions is that they will steal your heart.
That's right.
That's the big picture here. That if I have to, if I'm pursuing, higher education, I need to ask myself why I'm pursuing higher education. Is it so that I can get paid more and we can have more, we can do more trips, more of this? That's wrong. Yeah. If I'm seeking higher education, which I am, but for the glory of God, why am I seeking a marriage? For sexual reasons, for I want to have children, I want to throw the ball to my child. Those are self-gratifying reasons, right. Okay? Right. There's nothing wrong with those things in themselves, but if that's my treasure, then it is a problem. I want a marriage because I want to glorify God in my marriage. I want to preach the gospel to my children through the marriage, about grace and all this. Mm-hmm. Why do you want that job? Why are you trying to get out of the job that you're in? I need to ask myself, what's with my stuff? Is it because I want it? Because I want to look good, or I want to look better, I want to have it better alone, or I want to have it better so that I can give that glory to God? The problem with treasures is that they will steal your heart.
Yeah, and the devil is a great marketer, and how he's able to convince us that you need this. You need this because, hey, you really want it, and you've got a little bit of extra pay, you've got a little bit this time around, and so go indulge. And, it's interesting how you'd mentioned in verse 21 that the issue is the heart there, and one of the passages that I think about is James chapter 5, and where it seems to me, as a result of the rich and what they were doing with their treasures, he says in verse 1, "Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches are corrupted, your garments are moth-eaten, your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you, and will eat your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasure in the last days." And what the picture is there is that all of these things, that's where their heart was. Yeah. And so their mindset was all of my things are corroded, they're gone, and I'm in misery. Why? Because the devil, through his influence, had led those folks to put their heart in the things of this earth, and that's the danger for us as well. We have to guard against that.
When I watched Looney Tunes, it was very easily seen when the devil showed up, because he'd pop up right here, and he was red, and he was a devilish-looking rascal, good-looking mustache. Yeah, but he had pointy ears and a tail, and that little tail had a little poke on it.
That's right.
So I knew when the devil was there. Yeah. But it's not so easy today.
No.
Because it parades itself. Okay, this rascal is smart.
He is.
Okay. He is the God of this world.
That's
okay.
Right.
He's the prince of the power of the air. This is his domain in a very physical sense. There is a way in which that he runs this show. When I let's say I'm driving down 575, coming from Canton, coming here. Let's say somebody puts up a billboard, and the billboard is advertising, let's say a casino or a casino, or let's say an adult store. Okay, is that Satan sitting up there on that fence or up on that sign? In some ways, yes, but in some ways, no. So that's the influence of Satan in this world. I have to live in this, and so do you. If just imagine if the Lord allowed her to say, wait a second, pause, let's fast forward real quick. Let's just fast forward about 3 years, and let's just see what things are going to look like for you and your family. How about we bury your firstborn? Because if you want to take a bite out of I'm going to show you, if you take a bite out of this, your firstborn son's going to die. I do. Abel was firstborn, wasn't
Yeah.
he? Yeah, he was. And then Seth came along, which looked like Adam, which was creepy. Anyway, I guess he looked just like him. Anyway, but imagine if she would have been able to see what your choice is going to do.
Yeah.
We would be in the same position, we would think, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. I would love to have that, but I don't. But what I do have is God's wisdom. The Proverbs is chock full of wisdom, to where I don't have to go down certain streets because I know that that's nothing but danger down there. Possessions are the same way. It doesn't show up itself as something that's going to corrode. It shows itself up as something that's going to, make me feel the way that I need to feel. Yeah. But it's false hope. God alone is the only one or thing or possession that will ever make you feel the way that you need to feel.
That's right.
If we truly pursue it. A little bit of homework. Personal question. Ask yourself, how can we know if we're putting our hope in our possessions? The answer is, how do you respond when you don't have them? Or you are away from your possessions? Somebody who's addicted, somebody who is in an addiction, they can't function their day without their fix, and whatever that is. They can't eat, can't sleep, can't have normal conversation if it's that bad. There's a difference in somebody who sins and somebody who is in an addiction. It's very clear. It's somebody who can't function outside of this sin. The reality is that God graciously provides for us everything that we could ever need. So what I need to do is let loose of those things, or at least let loose of my mind or heart to those things. It's just a house. Yeah. It's just a car. It's, yes, God's provided. Yes, God is blessed. God has richly blessed. But it's just junk. It's just something that I don't need that one. I could get by with that one. And this isn't to say to seek after a life of poverty.
Right.
But it's to say, with the blessings that God has given you, how would you feel if they were gone? If it bothers you, this includes my child.
Yeah.
This includes my wife.
Yeah.
Is it going to bother you if they're not there? In some ways, yes. But in other ways, I'm glad for them. If let's just say that they do depart from this life, I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna go see them again.
That's right. And there's a lot that we could add to this. One of the words that came to my mind as you're talking through this is contentment. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be always. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's this thing that I have an inability to let loose of, to where it takes up so much of my time. I get smacked over the head. From maybe a particular week when that message pops up about my screen time, about how much time I've spent, and I love that. It gives me an idea and a gauge of, and allows me to reflect back on the week and think, okay, what was the usage of that? Was it time well spent? Or whatever the case is. So we could certainly talk about it in a bunch of different realms, but if our hope is, in the way that we worded this particular foundation, talking about our hope remaining, would imply the fact that it's there, and or was there at one point, if it's something that's caused us to maybe step away from. What was it that caused us to put our hope above in the first place? Maybe it was that moment where we were first came to Jesus and were cleansed of our sins, and in that moment, what we realize is that all of this that I have, all of this that's taken me away from the Lord and live for myself is just not worth my time and my effort. And that's why I like the analogy about the move, because we do need to check ourselves. And it shouldn't take a move to do this, but do we need to get in that mode of purging, to where our mindset has got to be redirected away from the things? Because the reality is, our mode of communication is has changed over time, and there's so much information just being sent our way, and a lot of it maybe is the stuff, and we need to purge. One of the things, one of the passages I think about, 1 John 3 and verse 2, where there will be that day when we see him face to face. But when you follow up that verse, is that person that has that hope in him purifies himself. And so there has to be that check mark where we realize that, listen, and as Jake mentioned, it's just stuff. Now we're stewards of those things, right? Sure. So there is attention that deserves to be toward those things, but not to the point to where it consumes us, where we're gratifying this.
Yeah. So you were talking about communication and information and stuff. I can be having a conversation with somebody, let's just say, and then about 3 hours later, I get a sponsored ad on my Facebook of exactly what I was talking about. And on one occasion, I got a sponsored ad about something I was thinking about. That's when I took my pistol and shot my iPhone. And enough's enough,
That's right.
That's like the phone ringing and it's not plugged into the wall.
Right.
Get out of the house. Nope. I don't want no part of that.
That's right. That's right.
But boy, our stuff will take off with wings and just fly, and we're chasing it. We're chasing it.
That's right.
I think this may be a myth, but this was told that Alexander the Great, when he died, I think it was a fever that he died of, in all of his great conquest, at his funeral, he was buried and he wanted his hands left out of the ground. And he wanted his soldiers to see that you can't take it with you when you go. And so that, if that was true, what a showing.
Wow. One
of the greatest finds, if I could be anything else other than a preacher, it would be Indiana Jones. Okay? If I could be Indiana Jones and preach and teach theology somewhere like Cambridge or something, that'd be fine. That'd be fine. But one of the greatest finds was King Tut. The most tombs that were left were robbed and tore apart and ravaged through the years, but his was preserved. And inside that Tut was all this stuff. Inside this tomb was all this stuff, all these luxuries and all these things inside this tomb, which showed you when you die, it's just going to be there. And I've heard of people who were buried in their Cadillacs. It's like, okay, you did take it with you when you went, but that's such a, it's like a dog chasing a car. What are you going to do when you get it? What's it going to do? Anyway,
bite that wheel.
I've seen that. Ooh, I've
that
seen
tire.
that.
I mean,
yeah. But we have to remember our inheritance. Let me ask you a question. This may cause you to lose some hair, but is there degrees of reward in heaven?
Well, the verbiage in Scripture would certainly give us indication that might be the case.
Yeah.
But I say let's go there and let's find out, man.
Yeah. Garland Elkins, one of my instructors in school, he said, I don't necessarily know if there's going to be degrees of punishment in hell. He said, but I don't want the best that hell has to offer. I thought, no, I don't either, brother.
Right.
Let's just march on to glory.
That's right.
And he's in it now, but there will be a sense in which I feel that heaven will mean more to some than to others. Not to take away from those who love it least, right, but or to talk about how great it'll be for those who love it most. But let's just imagine we're going on a trip. Mm-hmm. We're going on a trip, get out of this quarantine business, and we're ready to get out of the house. I know Missy and Casey both are.
Yeah. And
ready to go and go somewhere and just go see the ocean. Just sit there in the sand and get burnt, not care. Come home and get sand out of our toes for a week.
That's right.
But if we talk about the trip and we plan for the trip and we talk about things we're going to do when we get there, what we're doing is we're building up the trip. We're building up the plan. That has to become a conversation in my house. We're not talking about the stuff we got here and now. We're talking about the trip that we're about to go on.
Yeah.
This life is all about the next. Yeah. And the way that I live and the way that I steward will determine exactly what will happen in eternity. We are preparing for eternity one way or the other, one destination or the other. That's the true picture of the scheme that we're in.
And we can't really, we're not going to be able to be successful at that you're talking about if we can't have conversations within our home about what exists and what we are planning for and maybe what it's going to be like, and the things that I can do to help shape and mold the minds of my children to think about heaven, that it's not just this mystical place that exists. Right now the kids are very literal. They're they're creative in the sense that they can pretend and that sort of thing, but they don't. You get this look, this deer in the headlight look, when we're talking to them about where heaven exists, and it's not something that we can see, but it's there, and we know it's there because of faith and because of the evidence in the Bible, and it's just hard to conceptualize. But there's got to be conversations of that in our home, to where they know, listen, toys are good, fun, great, right? But let's have spiritual conversation. Let's get them to start thinking about the fact that there's greater good on this earth for us, and that's doing the things from day to day, in our mind and in action and deed and word and truth, right? Where it would communicate to our family, communicate to our kids that it's not the things that are around us that's the sky has our heart. It's that which is above.
Yeah. Literal. Stone scuffed his knee, and I think I said this maybe an episode or two ago, but he's still parading around saying it. He scuffed his knee, but it's fixed now, and he'll raise up his britches leg and he'll say, "God healed it." God healed it, and he's very literal. And I'm thinking, you're right. He did. He has designed you to heal. And what a picture! And just eliminate the middleman and eliminate the genetic regrowth, and just to simply say, God did that. That childlikeness needs to stay in all of us. Just to say, you know what? That's from God. You know what? That's a blessing. You know what? God would not have us do that. Just eliminate the conversation you have with your children. Do you know why Daddy does what he does? Because this is God's house. Daddy tells him to do it this way.
That's right.
Let's just imagine that you're going to invest in a company, and the product that they have to offer you is set to fail.
No.
Or set to decay, or
I'm out.
Or I mean, just imagine. Let's just say you got $5,000, and some investors want your money. Will you buy some bonds for us? I'm more likely to do bonds than stocks, but because they got to pay back the bond. But the stock is to say that you give us your money and just trust us, but your product is designed to fail. Well, yeah, well. Okay, but that's what we're doing with our bodies and our stuff is stuff that is not meant to. And if I don't read the preacher in Ecclesiastes, I don't know these things.
Yeah,
that it really is vain, and that word just means empty.
Yeah,
it's a chasing after the wind. Why would you pour money into a stock in a company with a product that is designed that will fail, and you don't even know if it's going to last another second? Why would you pour money into that and you would think, well, how foolish. Yeah. That's what we do when we pour all of our heart into all of this life. I'm looking forward to 1 Corinthians 15:51. Behold, it means look. Stop what you're doing, pause, put your eyes on this. I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep. I love how the Lord talks about death.
Yes.
For the saint. We shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we shall be changed. For this perishable body must put on the imperishable, and this mortal body must put on immortality. We have to obey the gospel. When the perishable puts on the imperishable, that means here and now.
Right.
and the mortal puts on immortality, which means I put that on now, then shall come to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? The sting of death is sin. The power of sin is the law, but thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. I have an opportunity today to put on immortality, to be buried in Christ at baptism, to be added to the church. That's the picture of putting it on. When you put it on, then there's no sting in death. Great, wonderful picture. Heaven will be perfect fellowship. Heaven will be a place where God is, that there is no sin, there's no trace of sin, there's no brokenness. It's where everything's made new. There's some times in my life that I'm sick of this world.
Oh, yes.
That I'm ready to go. That there's times of suffering where, and everybody, and even the Bible records people who have suffered, Lord, just kill me now. Just let me go on down. If you want to come down and just whisk me on up, that'd be perfect. But I need to kind of keep that mindset, or at least the words there. Lord, if you just want to come on, that'd be just fine with me. You know.
Listening to that, I think of 2 Corinthians 4, in verse 16. Therefore, we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. Yeah. Listen to Paul. For our light affliction, really? Paul said our light affliction, which is but for a moment. Yeah. But Lord, this suffering, it's so intense, it's so painful, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. And that, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. And so this eternal weight of glory, and it far more exceeding eternal weight of glory, allows you and I, if we can place our mind there, to put suffering, to put things of this earth in a proper perspective, because our eyes are focused on the things that we cannot see. Have you seen Jesus? I haven't seen Jesus. And Peter told him that you love him even though you haven't seen him. Was so much, it seems, our eyes and attention and focus are on the things that are temporal. It's on the things around us that we can touch and feel. But Paul, because his mind was and hope was in heaven, could say all of this is but for a moment.
Yeah. And the affliction aspect, for a Christian, there is no meaningless affliction. You hear people say, "Oh, a meaningless death," or somebody went into the crowd and killed people meaninglessly, which they mean unprovoked. They mean premeditated, or they mean no passion crime, if you will. But for the Christian, none of it is meaningless. Right. Every drop of suffering, whether it be cancer or criticism, whether it be you are ostracized for your faith, whether that be in the path of obedience, there is no such thing as meaningless suffering. This is building and preparing for you and I an eternal weight of glory. There's a purpose in it, and it's building me, if I allow it to, an eternal weight. I like that word, weight of glory. I'm ready for that to just bear down on me. Yeah. Whatever you want to come on, Lord, that'll be fine.
That's right.
Before I get around and turn that thing off.
That's right. Come on.
So y'all better be ready whenever we close out.
That's right.
But anyway, we are preparing for eternity one way or the other, one destination or the other. And it's our prayer that heaven is that. That's right. For you and yours as it is for us.